Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to create static libraries in JetBrains CLion and also how to then link to the library. This is a video version of this blog post that I made a while ago. If you go to my website, which is limeoats.com, you can scroll down and you'll see in the writing section there is a post called CLion and CMake. If you click read on that, you'll have a blog post here, which is basically the text version of the video I'm making now. And it just goes through how to create a static library in CLion and then how to link to it from your application. So I'm just going to go through all the steps that are outlined in that blog post, and then you'll see live how all of it works. So I'm going to start by opening up CLion. You can get CLion from JetBrains.com, and you go to CLion and you can download it here. So I want to take a second to talk about why CLion. CLion is a great application for developing C++ programs. I've jumped between many different programs for developing C++ applications, and CLion is by far the best one that I've found. It uses CMake by default, which is extremely important when developing C++ applications because it kind of takes away all of the extra work that you need to do with make files and all of that. So it's really great as far as compiling your programs go and setting it all up. And since CLion and CMake are both cross-platform, you can do this on Windows, Mac, Linux, anything. So it's a really great program. I highly recommend that you go and get a subscription for CLion and do your development in there. Alright, so let's begin. I'm going to start by creating a new project in CLion. I'm going to choose, I guess, C++ 14 for now. And I'm going to call the project TinyXML2. TinyXML is an open source library for parsing XML in C++, and I'm just going to turn its source code into a static library that I can then include in other projects. So I'm going to click create. It's going to create this project on my desktop and open it up CLion. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is open up my TinyXML2 folder, the project I just created in C++, or in CLion, and you're going to see a few things. You're going to see main.cpp, which is the first source file. CLion creates that automatically for you. That's just your C++ program. CMake lists.txt. We're going to talk more about this in a second, but this is basically instructions to CMake on how to build your project. And then this CMake build debug folder, which I'm actually going to change in a second through CLion settings. So I'll do that now. So in CLion, if you go to CLion preferences, and then you go to, let's see, build execution deployment, and then click on CMake, you'll see a generation path folder. You can leave this the same, it doesn't really matter at all. I like to change this to just say build. And what that does is basically when you build your program now, you'll get a nice build folder here. It has the exact same items as CMake build debug, but I just like build because it's a shorter name. So I'm going to delete that old one because now every time I compile, it'll put all the files into the build folder, which is what we want. That's not necessary at all, like I said, but it makes the project structure feel a little bit cleaner. And you can name that whatever you want. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to open up, or I'm going to take my source files from the tinyxml2 library, and these are just directly off of the GitHub repository for tinyxml2. I'm going to copy those into my project, my CLion project. So once that's done, you'll see it automatically refreshes in CLion, and the files are in there next to main.cpp. So, all right. So now it's time to edit the CMake lists to set it up for the library we're making. So if you go into CMakeLists.txt, like I said before, these are just instructions to CMake on how to build your project. So I'll go through each line quickly just to kind of describe what's going on here. So we have CMake minimum required version 3.10. So this is the minimum required version of CMake, obviously, that has to be installed before compiling your project. Then you have project tinyxml2. This is the name of your project. I named my entire project tinyxml2. You can name your project whatever you want. Alright, and then set CMake CXX standard 14. Now this line is going to look a little bit different than it did in my text version of this tutorial. That's just because CLion has updated since I made that, and it just looks a little bit different. No big deal. This just means that it's using C++ 14 when compiling. And then I'm actually going to add a line here right now. I'm going to say set source files and then main.cpp. I like to separate the source files from the add executable or add library line. This is just so that once you have more, it's kind of easier to keep it organized. So I'm going to then also remove this. So now I'm going to click on enable auto reload up here. This is so that every single time you change your CMake lists.txt, CMake will automatically run again based on what you've changed and recreate the build files for your project. So I'm also going to down here have to add a variable, which is source files, and this is the same exact variable we just set up here. So I'm just adding it here. So now every time I add files to my project, I can just add them to this source files variable, and it will automatically stay in here. So it's just a way to keep it more organized. All right. So now we have to change something here. We have to change this add executable. So what this does right now is basically if I build this project, it's going to spit out an executable for this project. That's just going to say probably hello world. Yeah, because that's the default thing that main.cpp has here. It's just printing hello world. But we don't want to do that. We don't even need this main.cpp. We're building this as a static library. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of main.cpp here because we don't need it. Well, we'll leave it for now. We're going to add tinyxml2.cpp here. So this is adding it to our project, and you have to do that for all source files that you're adding. So right now, the library CPP file is all that really matters, so we're adding that. And then we're going to also change add executable to add library. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that when you build your project by clicking this button up here, it will instead create a static library instead of an executable. So you'll see it says linking CXX static library. That means that it has created your static library. Okay. So if we go into the build folder, we're going to see a few things. We're going to see CMake automatically creates your make file and everything for you. You never have to worry about that if you're using CLion or CMake, which is really great. But the most important thing you're going to see is that in here you have your .a file. This is your library file, and this is the file you're going to have to bring with you to your project where you're including this library. So at this point in the tutorial, we now have a static library. The static library is called libtinyxml2.a. It'll be called whatever .a that you are creating. So if you create your own library, this is how you can turn it into from just having a header file and a CPP file, you can turn it into a library that you can then include in any project this way. So you're going to go into build, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy it and paste it to my desktop for now, because I'm going to use it later, just so that I don't have to come back into this folder at all. Alright, so that's the end of part 1 of this tutorial. I'm now going to transition into linking to this new library from a different project. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to library/frameworks. This is on a Mac at least. This is where a lot of framework files and libraries go that you include in your C++ projects. But you can put this anywhere you want. You could drop this on your desktop. This folder I'm about to create, you could drop it on your C drive. You could drop it anywhere you want. I'm just going to drop it in here because it's easier for me. So I'm going to create a new folder in here, and I'm going to call it tinyxml2. Okay. And so what am I going to put in here? I'm going to go inside here and I'm going to create 2 more folders. I'm going to create lib, which is short for library, and I'm going to create include. Okay. So in the lib folder here, I'm going to go inside, and this is where I'm going to put that A file that we created in the last part of this tutorial. I'm just going to drop it right in here, and that's it. That's all that has to go in here for now. Alright, and then in the include folder, all we need to put in here is, if we go back into that project that we were just in, our tinyxml2 project, or whatever project you created in CLion before, you need to copy the header file, so the H file, from there into this include folder. And that's it. So now at this point, your library is all set up, and now all that's left to do is create a new project or go into an existing project you have and link to it, and then you can use it wherever you want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new project. So this would be like your game or whatever project it is you're using or you're creating. I'm just creating a new one because I don't have any to use for this tutorial right now. So I'm going to create a new project called game. Okay. So I'm going to start by creating a new folder in my project at the root called CMake. So in this folder, this is where all of my CMake files are going to go, except for CMake lists.txt. That's not going to go in here. So basically, what are these CMake files? These CMake files are for each library you're including in your project. You're going to create instructions on where to find the library and where to find the different parts of the library, the include, so the header file, and also the lib file. So you need to right click on the CMake folder and then create a new file, and I'm going to call it find tinyxml2.cmake. The way you should name this file is always going to be find with a capital F and then the name of your library .cmake. Okay. So now I'm going to walk you through the 3 instructions you need in this CMake file. So the first one's going to be telling CMake where to look for the tinyxml2 folders or whatever your library is. So remember, I put mine in the library/frameworks folder, so I have to tell CMake where that is. So I'm going to say set, and then in parentheses, here, let me make this bigger. Set, and then in parentheses, find tinyxml2 paths. And again, always throughout this entire tutorial, replace tinyxml2 with whatever your library is. And then I'm going to say the path where I just dropped that folder. So library/frameworks/tinyxml2. All right, and that's it. So now CMake will know where that folder is. So then I have to tell it where the include directory is, where that header file is, and what the header the files actually are. So I'm going to say find path tinyxml2 include dir, and these names right here are variables. So this, the paths one, these are going to be used in CMake lists.txt in a moment. So that's where these are coming from. These can be whatever you want again, but I recommend you use those names to stay consistent. And then I'm going to put a space, and I'm going to put tinyxml2.h. So this is the name of the header file that it can find inside of the include folder that we created. So then I'm going to put path suffixes include. So this is the name of the folder we created inside of this folder. Okay. So we created this folder before, we created an include folder, so that's what the path suffix is. And then this is the file inside that folder, okay? And then paths find tinyxml2 paths, which is this variable right here that we just created. So this variable is used in this file to tell these different instructions the path to this header file and then the library file, which we're about to find as well. Okay. So that's all that is. And now we're just going to create the find library instruction, which is going to do the same thing as the find path for the header file, except for the library file. So find library tinyxml2 library. Again, that's just the variable we're going to be using from CMake lists in a moment. Names tinyxml2. This is the name of the .a file. Make sure you leave off the .a at the end. It just wants the name of the file itself. It knows that it's looking for .a, so you don't have to include that. So that's the name of the library, and then path suffixes, just like above, is going to be lib for this one, whereas before it was include. Okay, and then, oops, again, just paths, and then find tinyxml2 paths. Alright, and that's it. So for every library you ever create, obviously there's a lot more options you can do, and you could read the CMake documentation to find out what you need to put in there. But for most simple static libraries, these are the 3 important instructions. This one is just a variable with the name of the path. Then you use in these 2. So then you have find path, which is the header file, and find library, which is the .a file. Okay. So now that you have that, all we have to do now is update the CMake lists.txt and point to this CMake file we just created, and that will be it. You'll be ready to use your library. So now I'm going to open up CMake lists.txt, which I just did. So this is this is the other project. This is for the actual application where you're going to be using your library. So we have to do a few things again. The first thing we're going to do is down here, after this line, we're going to write list, and then append CMake module path, and then in quotes, CMake current list dir slash CMake, and the quotes and the parentheses. So what this does is this tells the CMake lists.txt where to look for your CMake files. So CMake current list dir is the root, because that's where the CMake lists file is. Slash CMake is the folder we just created, and then it's going to now know to look in that folder for our tinyxml2.cmake, or whatever your library is, .cmake. Okay? So that line's very important. Also, remember to enable auto reload so that CMake runs every time you save, or make a change, I should say. Alright, so now all that's left to do is to actually use our find tinyxml2.cmake in our CMake lists. So down here after our add executable line, we're going to, and obviously you can, and I recommend you do what I did in the last part of this tutorial and just create a variable for your source files. I'm not going to bother with that right now because I only have one file, and it's not very important for this tutorial, but you can do that. Alright, so I'm going to say include find package config, and all of these lines right here are for finding our library, okay? So we're going to say find package tiny XML2 required. So what this does is it goes and finds our find CMake list. So this name right here, tinyxml2, needs to be the same as our whatever's after the word find in our .cmake file name. Okay. Then include directories. tinyxml2 include dir. And this variable right here is the exact same variable that we created in here. Okay. And then finally, target link libraries, project name, which is a variable set by CMake automatically, which is the name of our project. And then our tinyxml2 library variable, which we created back here in our find tinyxml2.cmake file. Okay, and that's it. So make sure CMake runs in CLion. If you want to reload the entire CMake project and just make sure it runs, you can right click on your project and click reload CMake project, and it'll run through everything. Okay. And also in CLion, if you want to see your CMake output, if it's not showing for some reason, down here in the bottom left corner, hover over that and then click CMake, and it will show your CMake window. Alright, so that's it. This is all done now. You're all linked to your new library. So this part isn't in the text version, but I'm going to just quickly show you that it's working. So if you go back into main.cpp, you should now be able to say include, and you'll see in CLion you have your suggestions here. tinyxml2.h is now an option, and if I include that in my project, no errors are thrown and it works. So this is included now because it's linking to my library properly. And then similarly, I should be able to say tinyxml2, and then I have all of my library here that I could just use as I want. So there you go. I'm all linked to tinyxml2 now. This will work for any library you create this way. And that's it. So thank you for watching my video. Please like it or subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. And if you have any questions, let me know down in the comment section, or of course go to my website and you can find my Twitter or other ways to contact me there. So thank you for watching, and I hope this helps.